The flames had taken everything, but Lily Lancaster refused to weep. The October wind of 1878 swept across the Colorado plains, scattering ash where her family's homestead once stood. 3 days had passed since the fire, and still she sat amidst the charred remains, a shawl pulled tight around her shoulders, watching the horizon as if expecting the past to materialize from the golden prairie. Lily ran her fingers through her copper hair, once neatly pinned, but now falling loose around her face. At 23, she had already weathered the death of her parents to fever 2 winters past. The ranch had been her inheritance, her sanctuary, her purpose. Now it was nothing but scorched timber and memories. A hawk circled overhead, its sharp cry piercing the vast emptiness. Lily watched it glide on invisible currents, free in ways she could no longer comprehend. The neighboring homesteads were miles away, and though folks had come with food and sympathy in the days following the blaze, they had their own hardships to tend to. Promises of help rang hollow when everyone struggled to survive the harsh realities of frontier life. She had declined offers to stay with neighbors. Something kept her rooted to this plot of earth, as if abandoning it would mean surrendering the last thread connecting her to her family's dreams. So she made camp in what remained of the stone root cellar, the only structure partially spared by the inferno, and each day she sat in silent vigil among the ruins. A distant plume of dust on the horizon caught her attention. Lily squinted against the setting sun, watching as the cloud grew closer, eventually revealing a rider. She didn't reach for the rifle propped against a fallen beam beside her. There was little left to steal, and perhaps some part of her no longer cared about danger. The man approached slowly, his stallion's hooves crunching over debris. He pulled to a stop several yards away, respectful of her space. Even seated, Lily could tell he was tall, broad-shouldered beneath a dust-covered duster. His face remained shadowed beneath his hat brim, but she felt the weight of his gaze. "Madam," he said finally, his voice deep and rough like stone over stone. "Don't mean to intrude." Lily nodded, acknowledging his presence without invitation. The stranger dismounted with fluid grace that belied his size. Up close, she could see he was perhaps 30, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days' worth of beard. His eyes, startlingly blue against sun-browned skin, took in the devastation with a careful assessment. "Name's Decker Adams," he said, removing his hat to reveal dark hair streaked with sun-bleached strands. "Passing through to Silverton when I saw the smoke. Thought someone might need help." "Fire was days ago," Lily replied, her voice hoarse from disuse. "You're late, Mr. Adams." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "So I am." He glanced around again. "You planning on rebuilding?" The question hung in the air. Lily had asked herself the same thing each night as she huddled in the cellar, but had yet to find an answer. "I haven't decided," she said finally. "I'm Lily Lancaster." "You alone out here, Miss Lancaster?" "Mrs." She corrected automatically, though her husband 2 years buried made the title feel like a lie. "And yes, I am." Decker nodded, replacing his hat. "Well, Mrs. Lancaster, looks like you could use a hand, regardless of what you decide." He gestured to his horse, where bedrolls and supplies were secured. "I've got provisions and tools. I can help clear this at least. Make it safer while you think on things." Suspicion flared. "What's your price, Mr. Adams?" His expression remained steady. "A meal, if you've got it to spare. If not, I've got my own." Lily studied him, searching for deceit but finding only straightforward assessment. Men who wandered the territories alone were often running from something: the law, debts, or demons. Yet something in his calm, weathered demeanor suggested reliability rather than danger. "I have beans and coffee," she said finally. "Not much else." "That'll do fine." He turned back to his horse, untying his saddlebags with efficient movements. "I'll set up near the oak there, if that suits you." We can start clearing at first light. I didn't agree to rebuilding, Lily reminded him. Decker's eyes met hers, and something passed between them, an understanding of loss that needed no words. No, madam, you didn't. But either way, you shouldn't be sitting in ruins. As dusk painted the plains in lavender and gold, Lily watched the stranger build a small fire away from her cellar. He moved with purpose, each action precise and economical. It had been a long time since she'd observed a man at work. Her husband, James, had been slight and scholarly, a schoolteacher who dreamed of ranching but whose hands had remained soft until the day consumption took him. This man's hands were different, calloused and capable, marked with the evidence of hard living. Lily found herself wondering what paths had led him to her doorstep, such as it was. But as darkness fell, she retreated to her cellar without asking, carrying with her the strange comfort of another soul breathing in the night. Morning arrived with the scent of coffee. Lily emerged from the cellar to find Decker already at work, systematically sorting through debris, salvaging what could be saved, creating neat piles of what could not. "Hope I didn't wake you," he said, handing her a tin cup of steaming coffee. Lily accepted it gratefully. "I don't sleep much anymore." He nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Thought we might start by clearing the foundation. Looks like the stone base is mostly intact." "You've done this before," Lily observed, watching him work. "Built a few places. Rebuilt a couple too." He paused, surveying the land. "Good location. Water nearby, sheltered from the north wind." "It was my parents' dream," Lily said softly. "They came out from Pennsylvania when I was just a girl, wanted to build something of their own." Decker nodded. "Good land for cattle. You run a herd?" "Small one, 10 head. They were in the south pasture when the fire started. Neighbor's been keeping them for now." Lily sipped her coffee. "Are you a rancher, Mr. Adams?" "Was," he replied. "Wyoming territory. Before that, drove cattle up from Texas after the war." Lily waited for him to elaborate, but he returned to work, leaving her to wonder what had happened to his ranch in Wyoming. His reticence should have heightened her wariness, but there was something reassuring in his quiet industry. Whatever his past, his present intentions seemed honorable enough. They worked through the morning, speaking little. Lily found herself falling into rhythm with him, her body remembering the satisfaction of labor. By midday, they had cleared much of the debris from what had been the main house. "Your husband?" Decker asked suddenly, nodding toward a charred photograph frame she had set aside carefully. "Died 2 years ago. Consumption." Lily's fingers traced the damaged frame. "The photograph is ruined." "I'm sorry." The simple words carried genuine weight. "We were married 3 years. He taught at the school in town before he got sick." Lily rarely spoke of James, finding most people uncomfortable with her grief. "We had plans for this place." Decker wiped sweat from his brow. "You've kept it going alone?" "Tried to. Hired hands when I could afford it." She looked across the cleared foundation. "It was working well enough until the fire." "What happened?" Lily's eyes drifted to the far corner of the property. "Lightning struck the barn. Wind carried it to the house before I could do anything." They worked until sunset, clearing more than Lily would have thought possible. As darkness fell, they sat by the fire, eating a stew Decker had prepared from his supplies, supplemented with wild onions Lily had gathered. "Why Silverton?" she asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Decker poked at the fire. "Heard they're hiring at the mines. Winter's coming. Need steady work to see me through." "You've mined before?" "Done most things at one time or another." He added a log to the flames. "Grew up in Virginia. Left home at 16. Army at 18. After the war, went west. Been moving ever since." "Running from something?" Lily asked boldly. His eyes met hers across the fire, and for a moment she glimpsed something haunted in their depths. "Maybe," Or toward something? Hard to tell sometimes. The honesty of his answer disarmed her. I understand that. That night, lying in her makeshift bed in the cellar, Lily listened to the occasional creaks of the stranger's movements above. There was danger in trusting too easily, she knew. The territories were filled with men whose intentions turned dark when opportunity arose. Yet her instincts, the same ones that had kept her alive these 2 years alone, told her Decker Adams posed no threat. If anything, his presence had awakened something she thought had died with her husband, a sense of possibility. 5 days passed in similar fashion. Each day they worked from dawn until dusk. Decker proved knowledgeable about construction, carefully examining the remaining structure, discussing options for rebuilding in a way that assumed nothing about her intentions. He spoke of practical matters: the approaching winter, the need for shelter, the availability of timber from the nearby hills, without pressing her for decisions. On the 6th day, a wagon approached from town. Lily recognized Samuel Wilson, the storekeeper, driving the team. "Mrs. Lancaster," Wilson called as he pulled up, "brought those supplies you ordered before." He trailed off, eyeing Decker warily. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson." Lily moved toward the wagon. "This is Mr. Adams. He's been helping clear the property." Wilson nodded curtly. "Mrs. Lancaster, might I have a word? Privately?" Lily excused herself, walking with Wilson a short distance away. "You know anything about that man?" Wilson asked in a low voice. "Folks in town are concerned. You out here alone with a stranger." "He's been nothing but helpful," Lily said firmly. Wilson frowned. "Marshall Tucker mentioned a man fitting his description passed through. Said he was asking about work, but seemed careful, like a man watching his back." "Many are out here," Lily replied. "Yourself included, if I recall the stories about your hasty departure from Chicago." Wilson had the grace to look abashed. "Just looking out for a neighbor, Mrs. Lancaster." "I appreciate the concern," she said, softening. "Truly. But Mr. Adams has been respectful and hardworking. I believe he means well." After Wilson departed, Decker helped unload the supplies without comment. It wasn't until they sat by the fire that evening that he addressed Wilson's obvious suspicion. "Town's worried," he stated, not a question. Lily nodded. "Small communities look after their own. Wise of them." He stared into the flames. "I should move on soon. Been here longer than planned already." The thought of his departure created an unexpected hollow sensation in Lily's chest. "The foundation's nearly ready," she said. "If we were to rebuild?" Decker glanced at her, surprise evident. "You've decided then?" Lily hadn't realized until that moment that she had. "Yes," she said slowly. "I think I have. This is my home, the only one I have." A smile transformed his face, warming his features. "We could start on the frame tomorrow. Winter's coming, but we might get the basics up before the heavy snows. Enough to build on when spring comes." "We?" Lily questioned. Decker's smile faded slightly. "Figure of speech. But I could stay a while longer. Help get things started right." That night, Lily dreamed of her parents, of her husband, of the life she'd once imagined. But when she woke, it wasn't loss that filled her heart, but a tentative hope, as fragile and essential as the first green shoot after a wildfire. The next morning brought a shift in the weather. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising the first real storm of the season. They worked with increased urgency, Decker showing Lily how to measure and mark the foundation for the new structure. "Going to be bigger than the original," he commented, pacing off distances. "More practical for a working ranch." "I can't afford bigger," Lily admitted, concerned by his ambitious layout. "Materials are mostly free," he explained. "Timber from your land, stone from the creek bed. Labor's the expensive part, and you've got that covered." He gestured between them with a hint of a smile. By midday, the wind had picked up, carrying the scent of approaching rain. Decker insisted they secure what they'd already prepared and take shelter before the storm hit. They had just finished when the first heavy drops began to fall. The cellar, designed for storage rather than habitation, felt suddenly smaller with both of them inside. Lily sat on her makeshift bed, while Decker claimed a space near the entrance, leaving the small oil lamp between them. The rain drummed overhead, occasionally punctuated by thunder. The sound should have been soothing, but Lily found herself inexplicably tense, aware of every movement Decker made, every breath he took. "Tell me about your husband," he said unexpectedly. Lily looked up, surprised. "James. He was kind, thoughtful, not built for ranch work, but he tried." She smiled faintly at the memory. "He loved books, wanted to start a proper school out here someday." "You loved him," Decker observed. "I did." Lily pulled her knees to her chest. "What about you? Ever been married?" Decker's expression remained neutral. "No." "Never found the right woman?" Lily pressed, curious about this man who revealed so little. "Found her." His voice was so quiet she almost missed it beneath the rain. "Lost her before we could marry." "I'm sorry," Lily said, recognizing the pain in his brief words. "War," he explained simply. "Her family was from Richmond. Mine supported the Union. When the fighting started." He shook his head. "Doesn't matter now. Long time ago." The storm intensified, rain giving way to hail that clattered against the cellar doors. They sat in silence for a while, the shared understanding of loss creating a different kind of intimacy than Lily had expected. "Why'd you really stop here?" she asked finally. "Truth, Mr. Adams." He considered her question, his face half-shadowed in the lamplight. "Saw the ruins? Saw you sitting there. Reminded me of something." "What?" "After Appomattox. Coming home to find nothing left. That looked like the world's ended, but you're still breathing anyway." He ran a hand over his jaw. "Nobody helped me then. Thought maybe I could do different." The simple honesty of his answer touched something deep within Lily. "Thank you," she whispered. The storm lasted through the night. Lily drifted to sleep with the sound of rain, and Decker's steady breathing forming an unexpected lullaby. When she woke, she found him already outside, assessing any damage the storm might have caused. The air was clear and cold, the world washed clean. To Lily's relief, their preparations had held. What surprised her more was the sight of two familiar figures approaching on horseback, the Everett brothers from the neighboring ranch, leading a wagon loaded with lumber. "Mrs. Lancaster," called the older brother Thomas, "heard you might be rebuilding." Lily shot a questioning glance at Decker, who shrugged. "Ran into them yesterday when I was checking your timber stand. Mentioned we could use some seasoned wood to supplement the green." The Everetts dismounted, and Thomas extended his hand to Decker. "Figure we owe you a hand, Mrs. Lancaster. Your husband helped Margaret through that difficult birth last year. Least we can do." By midday, 3 more neighbors had arrived, bringing supplies and willing hands. Lily watched in astonishment as men who had barely spared time for a condolence visit now worked alongside Decker, following his quiet, confident direction. "You have a gift for this," she told him during a brief pause for water. He looked uncomfortable with the observation. "Just work that needs doing." But it was more than that. Lily saw how the men responded to him, his clear instructions, his willingness to tackle the heaviest tasks, his lack of pretension. By sundown, the foundation was complete, and the corner posts set. The beginnings of walls would come tomorrow. That evening, after the neighbors had departed with promises to return, Lily and Decker sat by the fire. The air between them had changed, charged with something Lily wasn't ready to name. "Why'd you really involve the neighbors?" she asked. Decker stared into the flames. Building a house is one thing. Building a home in these parts that takes community. You'll need them long after I'm gone. The reminder of his inevitable departure stung more than it should have. When will you leave for Silverton? He hesitated. Another week, maybe 2. Get the walls up and roof on before I go. Make it weathertight. Lily nodded, ignoring the hollow feeling his words created. I'm grateful. Don't need gratitude. His eyes met hers across the fire. Just want to see you standing in a proper house, not sitting in ruins. That night, Lily dreamed of Decker not as the man who had appeared like an answer to an unspoken prayer, but as someone who might stay, who might become part of the future she was trying to rebuild. She woke before dawn, troubled by desires she had thought buried with her husband. The days that followed took on a rhythm all their own. Neighbors came and went, bringing materials, labor, and increasingly food to share. Under Decker's guidance, the frame of the house rose steadily larger than Lily's original home, with practical features she hadn't considered. A covered porch wrapping 2 sides, extra windows for light, a stone chimney built to draw properly even in high winds. Lily worked alongside the men, learning from Decker's patient instruction. She noticed how he stepped back whenever possible, ensuring she understood each element of the construction, as if preparing her for when he would no longer be there to advise. A week into the building, Marshall Tucker rode out from town. Lily was helping hang a door when she noticed Decker go still, watching the lawman approach. "Adams," Tucker called, dismounting. "Thought that might be you." Decker nodded in greeting, his face carefully neutral. "Marshall." Tucker surveyed the progress on the house. "Quite the project you've taken on here." "Just helping a neighbor," Decker replied. The marshal's gaze shifted to Lily. "Mrs. Lancaster. Town's been talking about your good fortune, finding such a skilled carpenter passing through." "I've been blessed with many helpful neighbors," Lily said carefully, sensing tension between the men. "Indeed." Tucker turned back to Decker. "Mind if we have a word? Private-like." Decker wiped his hands on his trousers. "Nothing to say that Mrs. Lancaster can't hear." Tucker's expression hardened slightly. "Suit yourself. Got a wire from Wyoming territory. Marshal in Cheyenne's looking for a man of your description. Something about a disagreement with a cattle baron named Hargrove." Lily's heart sank, but Decker's expression remained impassive. "No disagreement," he said evenly. "Hargrove tried to run me and 20 other small ranchers off our land. When that didn't work, his men burned us out. Shot my foreman when he tried to save the horses." "And Hargrove's son?" Tucker pressed. "Wire says he took a bullet." "In self-defense," Decker replied, a hard edge entering his voice. "After he and his men attacked my property. Any court that heard the full story would clear me." "Maybe," Tucker allowed. "Not my jurisdiction anyway. Just thought you should know the wire came through. Folks are asking questions." After the marshal departed, Lily found Decker at the edge of the property, staring at the distant hills. She approached cautiously, uncertain what to say. "Is it true?" she asked finally. "What the marshal said?" Decker turned to face her, his eyes troubled. "Yes. Hargrove wanted my water rights. When I wouldn't sell, things turned ugly. His son led a raid on my ranch. My foreman died. I shot back." "Did you kill him? Hargrove's son?" "No. Wounded him." Decker's jaw tightened. "Should have waited for the law to sort it out, but there was no law to speak of. Hargrove owned the local sheriff. By the time his men came for me, I knew I'd hang whether I deserved it or not." Lily digested this information. "So you ran. Left everything I'd built, again." His eyes held hers. "I didn't lie to you, Lily. Just didn't tell the whole truth." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and something about the way he said it made her breath catch. "What will you do now?" "Finish what I started here," he said firmly. "Then move on. Like planned. Your neighbors don't need to get dragged into my troubles. That night, Lily lay awake in her cellar, which felt increasingly inadequate as the new house took shape above. Decker's story troubled her, not because she doubted his version of events, but because it illuminated how quickly security could be stripped away, something she understood all too well. The following days brought a subtle change in the atmosphere. Word of the marshal's visit had spread. Some neighbors stopped coming to help. Others arrived with wary glances for Decker, though they continued to work alongside him. Through it all, Decker maintained his steady focus on the house, if anything working with greater intensity. The walls were completed, the roof half finished. At the current pace, the structure would be enclosed within days. One evening, as they sat by their usual fire, Lily broke the strained silence. "You don't have to leave, you know." Decker looked up sharply. "What?" "When the house is finished," she clarified. "You don't have to go to Silverton." He studied her face in the firelight. "Lily, I need help with the ranch," she continued quickly, heart pounding. "Winter's coming. The cattle need tending. There's fencing to repair. Fields to prepare for spring." She took a breath. "I can't pay much, but there's room in the new house. A proper room, not a cellar." "It's not that simple." "It could be," she insisted. "Marshal Tucker said himself it's not his jurisdiction. You'd be safe here." Decker shook his head. "Men like Hargrove don't give up easily. I won't bring that trouble to your door." "I'm offering you a chance to stop running," Lily said softly. "To build something again." His expression softened. "Why would you do that? You barely know me." The question hung between them, demanding an honesty Lily wasn't sure she was ready to give. Yet something about the moment, the crackling fire, the nearly complete house rising behind them, the vast star-filled sky pushed her toward truth. "Because in 2 weeks, you've shown me more kindness than most have in 2 years. Because you saw someone sitting in ruins and stopped to help without asking for anything in return." She met his gaze steadily. "Because I was starting to think I'd spend the rest of my life alone, and then you appeared." Decker's eyes darkened with an emotion Lily couldn't name. He stood abruptly, moving away from the fire. "You're confusing gratitude with something else." "Don't tell me what I'm feeling," Lily said, rising to face him. "I buried a husband. I know the difference between gratitude and—" She hesitated. "And what?" he pressed, voice rough. "And wanting someone to stay," she finished, quieter now. "Not because I need help with the ranch, though I do, but because when you leave, this place will feel empty in a way it didn't before you came." Decker closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands, calloused from work, came up to frame her face with unexpected gentleness. For a breathless moment, Lily thought he might kiss her. Instead, he rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed. "Lily Lancaster," he murmured, "you deserve better than a wanted man." "I deserve to choose," she whispered back. He drew back slightly, searching her face. Whatever he found there seemed to decide something for him. "Let's finish the house," he said. "Then we'll talk about what comes next." The following morning brought the first snowfall earlier than expected. Light flakes that melted upon contact with the ground, but served as a warning of what was to come. Decker organized the remaining workers with renewed urgency, focusing on completing the roof before heavier weather arrived. By midday, dark clouds had gathered, and the snow began to fall more heavily. The last of the neighbors departed, promising to return when weather permitted. Lily and Decker worked alone through the afternoon, racing against the rapidly accumulating snow to finish securing the roof. As dusk approached, bringing with it a bitter wind, Decker helped Lily down from the ladder. "That's it," he announced. "Not perfect, but it'll keep out the worst of the weather." Lily surveyed their handiwork with pride. The house stood solid against the darkening sky, windows already installed, door hanging properly. Inside was unfinished bare floors, walls without plaster, but it was enclosed, offering protection from the elements. "We should move your things from the cellar," Decker suggested. "Storm's setting in for real now." They worked quickly, transferring Lily's few possessions into the new house. Decker built a fire in the stone fireplace, testing the draw of the chimney he'd constructed. To Lily's relief, it functioned perfectly, warmth beginning to fill the main room. "Your first night in your new home," Decker said, watching the flames catch. "How does it feel?" Lily looked around, taking in the space larger than her previous house, designed with careful thought to function and comfort. "It feels like a beginning." The storm intensified through the evening, wind howling around the eaves, testing the craftsmanship of their work. They ate a simple meal beside the fire, sitting on blankets spread across the unfinished floor. The intimacy of the moment wasn't lost on Lily alone with this man who had rebuilt not just her home, but something within herself she'd thought permanently damaged. "Tell me about your ranch in Wyoming," she said, curious about the life he'd created before Hargrove destroyed it. Decker seemed surprised by her interest but began to speak, describing land not unlike her own good grazing, with a creek running through it and mountains visible in the distance. He spoke of the cabin he'd built, the small herd he'd tended, the orchards he'd started planting. Had dreams of it becoming something substantial, he admitted, somewhere permanent. "You could have that again," Lily said softly. He met her gaze across the fire. "Maybe. Someday." The wind moaned around the house, rattling the new windows. Decker rose to check that everything remained secure, moving about the structure with proprietary care. When he returned to the fire, he sat closer to Lily than before. "House is holding well," he reported. "Good. Solid construction." "You're proud of it," Lily observed. "Built to last." His hand rested on the floor between them, inches from hers. "Should see you through many winters." Lily covered his hand with her own. "Us," she corrected quietly. "It could see us through many winters." Decker's eyes, blue and intense in the firelight, searched hers. "Lily," he began, caution in his voice. She tightened her grip on his hand. "I know what I'm offering, Decker, and what I'm asking. You deserve certainty, safety." "I thought I had those things once," she replied. "Fire took them in an hour. Nothing's certain out here." Her thumb traced circles on his wrist. "But I'd rather risk heartache than spend my life wondering what might have been if I'd been brave enough to ask you to stay." Something broke in his expression, a wall coming down, revealing a longing that matched her own. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward. His lips met hers with tentative pressure, a question rather than a demand. Lily answered by sliding her hand to the nape of his neck, drawing him closer. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness dissolving in the heat between them. When they finally parted, both breathless, Decker rested his forehead against hers. "I can't promise it'll be easy," he warned. "Hargrove is in Wyoming," she finished, "and we're here, building something new." That night, as the storm raged outside, they created their own shelter within the walls they'd raised together. Lily rediscovered parts of herself she'd thought lost forever, not just passion, but hope for a future that held more than mere survival. In Decker's arms, she found both tenderness and strength, his touch reverent yet hungry, as if he too had been starving for connection. Morning arrived with blinding whiteness, snow covering the landscape in pristine drifts. They awoke tangled together beneath blankets near the banked fire, the house around them cold but secure. Decker rose first, stoking the fire back to life before moving to the window to survey the transformed world outside. "Must be 2 feet already," he reported. "More coming." Lily joined him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Through the window she could see nothing but white in every direction. The familiar landscape rendered foreign by the storm. We're snowed in. He slipped an arm around her waist. Provisions should last. Firewood's plentiful. So we wait it out, Lily said, leaning into him. Together, he agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. The storm continued for 3 days, trapping them in their newly built sanctuary. They used the time to work on the interior, Decker crafting simple furniture from the extra lumber, Lily creating curtains from fabric she'd salvaged from the ruins. They talked more than they ever had before, sharing stories of their pasts, dreams for the future, fears that had driven them, and hopes that sustained them. By the time the sky cleared, the house had become a home in more ways than one. They ventured outside to find the world transformed, beautiful in its stark simplicity. Decker immediately set to work clearing paths to the necessary outbuildings, while Lily prepared a heartier meal than their storm rations had allowed. A week passed before the snow melted enough for travel. Decker rode to town for supplies, returning with news that set Lily's heart racing. Marshal Tucker received another wire, he told her, his expression grave. Hargrove's men have been spotted in Denver, asking questions. Fear clutched at Lily's throat. They're looking for you. Decker nodded, unloading the supplies with methodical care that belied the tension in his shoulders. Tucker thinks they'll make their way here eventually. Word travels. What are we going to do? Lily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He paused, turning to face her fully. That depends on you. On me? I could leave, he said quietly. Draw them away from here. From you. The thought of him riding away, perhaps never to return, created a physical pain in Lily's chest. No, she said firmly. We face this together. It could be dangerous, Decker warned. These aren't men who care about justice. Neither are they men who will stop hunting you, Lily pointed out. Even if you left now, they'd come here looking. They'd question me, threaten me, maybe worse. She took his hand. At least together, we have a chance to end this. Decker's expression softened. When did you get so fierce, Lily Lancaster? When I found something worth fighting for, she replied simply. They spent the evening planning. Decker believed Hargrove's men would come soon, within weeks, not months. They needed allies, preparations, a strategy that didn't involve simply waiting to be found. The following day, they rode to the Everett Ranch. Thomas Everett listened to their situation with growing concern. Hired guns coming after you? He summarized. Over a water dispute? Hargrove's not a man who accepts defeat, Decker explained. And his son nearly died from the wound I gave him. Everett exchanged glances with his brother. The Lancaster place is the first ranch they'd come to riding in from Denver, he observed. You're exposed out there. We know, Lily acknowledged. That's why we're here. We need help. By nightfall, word had spread among the neighboring ranches. To Lily's surprise and gratitude, the response was unanimous support. These people had survived the frontier by standing together against threats, whether from nature, indigenous resistance to their encroachment, or lawless elements. They viewed Hargrove's vendetta as the latter. A plan formed. Lookouts would be posted on the approaches to the valley. At the first sign of strangers who matched the description of Hargrove's men, neighbors would be alerted. The community would gather, presenting a united front that might discourage violence. Hargrove's men expect to find you alone and vulnerable, Thomas explained to Decker. They won't be prepared for 20 armed ranchers standing with you. The weeks that followed were marked by vigilant preparation and an underlying tension that never quite dissipated. Decker insisted on improving the defensibility of their home, reinforcing doors, creating shutters that could be quickly closed and barred, establishing clear lines of sight from strategic positions. Each morning, Lily woke wondering if this would be the day their fragile peace was shattered. Yet amid the preparations and worry, their life together deepened. They worked side by side tending the cattle, completing the interior of the house, planning for spring planting. In the evenings, they sat before the fire, sometimes talking late into the night, other times content in shared silence. They learned each other's rhythms, preferences, the small intimacies that transform two separate lives into one shared existence. One evening in early December, as the first Christmas of their life together approached, Decker presented Lily with a small wooden box he had crafted. "What's this?" she asked, tracing the intricate carved pattern on the lid. "Open it," he urged, uncharacteristic nervousness in his voice. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft fabric, lay a simple gold band. Lily's breath caught. "It's not fancy," Decker said quickly. "Had the goldsmith in town make it from a nugget I've carried since California. If you'd prefer something else." "It's perfect," Lily interrupted, her eyes filling with tears. She looked up at him. "Is this what I think it is?" Decker took her hand. "I know we've done things out of the usual order," he said, a smile touching his lips. "But I'd like to make it official, if you would. Be my wife, Lily. Let me be your husband in name as well as in fact." "Yes," she whispered, joy bubbling through her despite the uncertain future they faced. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were wed the following Sunday in the small church in town, the same neighbors who had helped build their home bearing witness to their vows. Marshall Tucker attended, his presence both a gesture of community support and a reminder that danger still lurked on the horizon. As they rode home together through the winter landscape, now husband and wife before God and community, Lily felt a sense of completion she had never expected to find again after James's death. The house rose before them, smoke curling from the chimney where they'd left a fire banked, windows glowing with lamplight they'd left burning to welcome their return. "Our home," Decker said, following her gaze. "Still hard to believe sometimes." Lily squeezed his hand. "Believe it. It's real. We're real." The warning came 3 days after Christmas. A rider from the Everett Ranch arrived breathless, having pushed his horse hard through the snow. 6 men, he reported, heavily armed. "Ask directions to the Lancaster place at Miller's Trading Post. They're maybe 2 hours behind me." Decker's face settled into grim lines. "Thank you. Spread the word to the others as planned." After the rider departed, Decker and Lily moved with the efficiency of those who had prepared for this moment. Weapons were checked and positioned, shutters secured. Their most valuable possessions packed in case retreat became necessary. "You should go to the Everetts," Decker told her as they worked. "Be safer there." Lily shook her head firmly. "My place is here. With you." He looked as though he might argue, but instead pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Stubborn woman," he murmured against her hair. "What did I do to deserve you?" "You stopped when others would have ridden past," she answered simply. They took up positions at the windows, watching the approach from the east. The winter sun cast long shadows across the snow, creating a landscape of stark contrasts, brilliant white and deep blue shadows, beautiful and treacherous. The riders appeared first as dark specks against the white, then gradually took shape as men on horseback, moving with purposeful intent. Lily counted 6, just as reported. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her hands remained steady on the rifle Decker had taught her to use with precision. When the riders were within 200 yards, another sound reached them, hoofbeats from the north and west. Lily risked a glance and felt a surge of gratitude. Their neighbors were arriving as promised, at least 15 riders converging on their property from different directions. The approaching men noticed as well. They pulled their horses to a halt, conferring briefly before continuing their approach at a more measured pace. Decker moved to the door. "Stay inside," he instructed Lily. "Keep a clear shot if you need it." Before she could protest, he stepped out onto the porch they had built together. From her position at the window, Lily could see the riders clearly now, hard-faced men whose expressions showed surprise at finding not an isolated fugitive, but a settled man with apparent community support. Thomas Everett and several other ranchers positioned themselves alongside Decker, a living barrier between the strangers and the house. Marshall Tucker rode forward from the group of neighbors, his badge visible in the winter sun. "Something I can help you gentlemen with?" Tucker called. The leader of the group, a lean man with a distinctive scar across his chin, surveyed the gathered ranchers with calculating eyes. "Looking for Decker Adams. Heard he might be in these parts." "I'm Adams," Decker replied, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. "You're a hard man to find," the scarred man observed. "Mr. Hargrove sends his regards." "I'm sure he does," Decker responded evenly. "You've had a long ride for nothing. I've settled here. This is my home now. My wife's land. Whatever Hargrove wants with me, it's over." The scarred man smiled thinly. "Mr. Hargrove doesn't see it that way. His boy nearly died. He wants justice." "Seems to me," Marshall Tucker interjected, "if it's justice he's after, there are courts for that. Sending armed men across territorial lines looks more like revenge than justice." "We've got papers," the scarred man said, reaching slowly into his coat to produce a folded document. "Warrant for Adams's arrest. Signed by Judge Phillips of Wyoming Territory." Tucker moved his horse forward to examine the paper. After a moment, he handed it back. "This may be valid in Wyoming, but it has no authority here. If Mr. Hargrove wants to pursue legal channels, he can contact the territorial governor and request proper extradition." The tension in the air was palpable. Lily kept her rifle trained on the scarred man, recognizing him as the primary threat. If violence erupted, he would move first. "Now," Tucker continued, his hand resting casually near his sidearm, "as you can see, Mr. Adams has established himself here. These folks," he gestured to the gathered ranchers, "consider him a neighbor worth standing for. So you have a choice. You can ride back to Mr. Hargrove and tell him to pursue legal means if he believes he has a case. Or you can try something foolish. In which case?" He nodded toward the armed ranchers. "I can't guarantee your safety." For a long moment, the scarred man said nothing, his gaze moving from Tucker to Decker to the determined faces of the gathered neighbors. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "We'll deliver your message, but Hargrove isn't a man who forgets." "Neither are we," Thomas Everett spoke up. "You tell Hargrove that Adams has friends here, friends who remember faces and hold grudges of our own. He sends men here again. They won't ride out." The scarred man's eyes narrowed, but he made no reply. With a gesture to his companions, he turned his horse. The group departed at a deliberate pace, dignity preserved, but purpose thwarted. No one moved until the riders disappeared over the eastern ridge. Then, as if a spell had broken, the neighbors began to relax, horses shifting beneath them, voices rising in relieved conversation. Lily set aside her rifle and rushed outside, crossing the distance to Decker in quick strides. He caught her in his arms, holding her tightly against the cold. "They'll be back," he murmured, too low for others to hear. "Maybe not these men, but others. Hargrove won't give up so easily." "Let them come," Lily replied fiercely. "We'll be ready, together." That evening, after their neighbors had departed with promises to remain vigilant, Lily and Decker sat before their fire, the tension of the day slowly ebbing from their bodies. "I never thought I'd find this again," Decker said after a long silence. "A home. People willing to stand with me." He took her hand. "You." Lily leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "When I was sitting in those ruins, I thought my life was over, that all I had to look forward to was existing in the shadow of what I'd lost." She turned to face him. "But you changed that. You showed me that what's broken can be rebuilt, sometimes stronger than before." Do you really think Hargrove will give up? She asked after a moment. Decker considered the question carefully. Not entirely. But legal extradition would be difficult. His son and men were clearly the aggressors. And knowing the community here stands with us changes the calculation. Makes it more costly for him to pursue. So we remain vigilant, Lily concluded. But we also live our lives. Exactly. Decker smiled, the worry lines around his eyes softening. We build. We plan. We face whatever comes together. As winter yielded to spring, they did exactly that. The house Decker had built became truly their home, filled with the small comforts and personal touches that transform shelter into sanctuary. They added a proper barn, expanded the corral, planted a vegetable garden that promised summer bounty. Neighbors came and went freely now, the community bonds forged in crisis strengthening through shared work and celebration. Decker, once wary of attachments after so many losses, found himself deeply rooted in this place and among these people who had stood with him when it mattered most. In late April, as the first wildflowers painted the prairie in swathes of color, Lily shared news that completed their rebuilding in ways neither could have imagined when they first met among the ruins. A child, Decker whispered, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. Our child. Due before winter, Lily confirmed, her eyes bright with happy tears. Another life to fill this home you built. Decker gathered her close, his heart so full it seemed impossible to contain such joy. When I saw you sitting in those ruins last fall, I never imagined... He shook his head, words failing him. Nor did I, Lily agreed softly. But that's the wonder of it, isn't it? How life can transform from ashes to this something beautiful and new. As summer bloomed around them, bringing lush growth to the land that had seemed so desolate in the aftermath of fire, Lily often thought about the strange paths that had led them both to this shared life. How destruction had cleared the way for creation. How loss had opened the possibility for finding. One evening, as they sat on the porch, Decker had insisted on building for sitting and watching the sunset someday. His arm around her shoulders and her head resting against him, Lily voiced the thought that had been forming in her mind. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that day? If you just kept riding toward Silverton? Decker considered the question, his fingers absently tracing patterns on her arm. Sometimes, he admitted. But then I look at this house, at you, at the life we're making, and I can't imagine any other path. Nor can I, Lily agreed, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in the same golden hues as the day they'd first met. From ruins to this, it seems like a dream sometimes. Not a dream, Decker corrected gently, his hand coming to rest on the gentle swell of her belly where their child grew. A home. Our home. As darkness settled over the prairie, stars appearing one by one in the vast Colorado sky, Lily Lancaster Adams sat not in ruins, but in the shelter of the home her husband had built, and the love they had crafted together stronger for having known destruction, more precious for having nearly been lost, and enduring as the land that had brought them together.